Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. Today I'm doing a video about my attempt to find horror novels at my local public library. I love my local library, don't get me wrong. I enjoy going there at least every couple of weeks and just browsing and see some of the new books coming in. But they really don't have a lot of horror books, but it's not just them. Horror doesn't really seem to have a place like on the library shelf anymore beyond Stephen King and maybe some Anne Rice. And that's a shame. I did do a little digging and I'll show you what I found. So they used to do this at my library, but they don't do it anymore, which is a shame, is that they would put a sticker on the spine with like a heart if it was romance and a unicorn if it was fantasy, or maybe a dragon, and a little magnifying glass or like a Sherlock Holmes guy for mystery, and a skull and crossbones for horror. And that was great, but they don't do that anymore. So a lot of times I'm just finding myself looking through thrillers. Thrillers are big in my library. Thrillers are big everywhere. And I love thrillers, don't get me wrong. I love a good thriller, but sometimes I want to read horror, like something new that I can just take out of the library, but I can't find any. So this is my pathetic attempt to find horror books at my local library. So I will share with you what I found, and I actually read 3 out of the 4 books this past month. So I deliberately skipped over Stephen King, Joe Hill, and Anne Rice, because those are the 3 that my library carry, 3 of like well-known horror books. Even Clive Barker has been whittled down to 2 books, Scarlet Gospels, which I have, and The Essential Clive Barker, which I've checked out like 20 times. I need to buy a copy of that book because it's worth it for the introduction alone. But anyway, so here's what I got. So the one like horror book that I could find, just, and it looks like horror just from the cover, is called The Mall by S.L. Gray. So this book takes place in South Africa, and I did enjoy the vernacular and the speech patterns. I thought that was really interesting. I like the 2 characters. It's a stoner dude who meets up with this girl who loses a kid that she's supposed to be babysitting, and together they're looking for the child, and they go into like this lower and lower levels of, it's sort of like Dante's Inferno, like they keep going into these different rings of horror below the mall. And then there's also kind of like an alternate universe happening where people are turned into sort of like these mall robots, whether they're shoppers or store clerks, but they're chained. You know, it's kind of like there's a lot of like horror movies. Well, not a lot, but several horror movies that take place in malls. Dawn of the Dead is the one that comes to mind, but there's also some other, and I'm just blanking on the titles, but there are some mall horror stories. So I think that there's something about a shopping mall that's a great setting for a horror film and book. So it wasn't great, but it was pretty good. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the next one is not a horror book. It's actually a thriller, and it's pretty new. It's called The Descent by Tim Johnston. The blurb says, a riveting literary thriller of the can't stop turning the page, stay up all night variety. Little bit of a stretch. I mean, it definitely was literary. I would recommend it if you enjoy really beautiful writing with a pretty basic thriller plot. This next one was pretty good too. This was also a thriller. This is Don't Tell a Soul by D.K. Hood, Detectives Kane and Alton, Book 1. I mean, this was a pretty standard like detective thriller whodunit with the kind of team, of detective team. I know these books are very popular. A lot of people read them, and I don't dip into this kind of genre too often, but I did enjoy this. I thought it was really good, and it was entertaining, and it was a quick read. It wasn't horror, but it was a fine thriller. And the last book I got, and I do believe this would be categorized as horror. I haven't started it yet, but I will read it before my 21-day loan is out. It looks really good. It's Handling the Undead by the Swedish author John, I'm not going to even attempt that middle name, Lindvist. He wrote Let the Right One In, which I did not read, but I love the original Swedish film. I know there's an American remake that I haven't seen, but I really, really loved that first film. It's a vampire story, really great. So I'm looking forward to this. So I can't judge my library completely for not having horror because I have a feeling I'm going to really like this. It's a zombie story, but I haven't started it yet. So that's what I found when I went looking for horror in my local library. Kind of disappointing, but I guess horror is just not that popular right now. But we're going to change that, right? So let me know in the comments below if your local library has good horror books or where you find your horror books. Like, do you just go on Amazon and buy books, or do you go to thrift stores, or what are your secret supplies, or do you just have so many books like I do that you could read them for the next 5 years and never run out? So maybe I should just do that and shop in my own closet, as they say. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you next time. Bye.